following is a presentation of the Belly Up Sports Media Network.
Welcome to the Morgan Man Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Stacy Morgan. Here on the Morgan Man Sports Podcast, we talk Atlanta Falcons news, pre-game predictions, and all other news surrounding the Atlanta Falcons.
Touchdown, Atlanta!
Also on the podcast, we talk Call of Duty League, esports, covering Roster Mania, major predictions, COD champs, player trades, and much more to get you ready for every single CDL weekend.
Scuff goes through, and Scuff snaps, wins the one-on-one in OpTic with the reverse sweep.
If that sounds good with you, put on your Falcons jersey, grab your gaming headset, and let's get this show started. What is going on, you guys? I'm your host, Stacy Morgan, and you are listening to the Morgan Man Sports Podcast here on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and on YouTube. Ladies and gentlemen, today we are talking about the Call of Duty League with the second week of Major 4 online qualifiers. And guys, let me tell you, this is going to be an exciting weekend. We are just pretty much 2 weeks away from the Major 4 tournament. So each and every single one of these matches do count moving forward. They've been counting ever since the start of the season, but now it is do or die for a lot of these teams. So without any further delay, let's go to get straight into today's action. Alright guys, so it is do or die for a lot of these teams except for the Vegas Falcons, with OpTic's pretty much overall sweep this weekend. They eliminate the Vegas Falcons from playoff contention. So now that leaves the Los Angeles Guerrillas, Cloud9, New York, and the Minnesota Rokkr left to qualify for champs. But you would have to rely on OpTic to start losing out a lot of their series if you're Rokkr, because they're about realistically the only team that could get up into that top 8 position with OpTic. But then again, you would have to have Breach also losing a lot of their series. I don't see really Miami Heretics slowing down any. I think they're about the 6th, maybe 5th best team in the CDL for this season. So I'm pretty comfortable with where they're at. But Boston Breach and OpTic and Minnesota Rokkr are the top 3 teams I'm looking at to be the final contenders for the playoff spots moving forward. And also this past weekend, Atlanta FaZe has now tied the Los Angeles Thieves with the number 1 spot for CDL points overall. And guys, let me tell you, this is an intense rivalry right here against Atlanta FaZe and the Los Angeles Thieves. Because this past weekend, FaZe had a 3-2 series against Vancouver Surge, and a complete series sweep against the Los Angeles Thieves. And Thieves, before going into this past weekend, was 410 points, and they're still 410 points because they lost every single one of their series. But FaZe, on the other hand, did win a lot of their series, all of them. Now they're tied with Thieves for the number 1 spot. So these two teams are battling back and forth. I don't see an Ultra sneaking in way up there with Thieves or FaZe, but I do see them staying at number 3. Vancouver Surge, I see them staying at number 4. Ravens 5. Miami Heretics at 6. So really, 7 and 8 is going to be the 2 biggest factors to see who's going to be the last to qualify. And number 1 and 2, which will be Thieves and FaZe, to see who's going to be the number 1 spot and take home the crown for most CDL points this season. So, of course, like always, everybody knows that during the tournaments and the major, like qualifiers, CDL points stack up. So, if you're Thieves, you need to step your game up. But with FaZe, you're sitting pretty comfortable, but at the same time, you're just like, what in the world is going on with this team? One week they win all their series. The next week they don't win jack, you know what. So let's go over the Thieves right quick for this weekend. So really, they only got, just one series this weekend, and that's against the Los Angeles Thieves. While Atlanta FaZe has two series this weekend. One will be Friday, May 9th, which will be today when you're listening to this, against Cloud9 New York at 6 p.m. Eastern. And then Sunday, May 11th at 4:30 p.m. Eastern against the Los Angeles Guerrillas. So FaZe has an opportunity to take over the number one spot this weekend, because we already know that the Los Angeles Thieves is going to win over the Vegas Falcons. That right there is a no-brainer. Or at least I say it is, and then watch the damn Vegas Falcons, excuse my French here, beat the Los Angeles Thieves. That would be some funny stuff right there if that were to happen. The Vegas Falcons. Oh my goodness, I'm laughing at it right now. And I mean, they could honestly do it because the Vegas Falcons has beaten OpTic before. And has went toe-to-toe with the Atlanta FaZe and many other teams like the Toronto Ultra and the Vancouver Surge, Royal Ravens, Miami Heretics. So it is not out of the realm, but is a low chance possibility for the Vegas Falcons to win, but it is not zero. So we're going to see about this. And I don't know why I'm even sitting here laughing, because the Atlanta FaZe could potentially lose to Cloud9 and the Los Angeles Guerrillas. It has happened plenty of times before. But the way this team is built this season, I just don't see it for either one of these teams. But Atlanta FaZe does have the opportunity, like I said, to capitalize on some easier ranked teams and take over that number one spot against the Los Angeles Thieves. And then that would lead into next weekend, where FaZe only has one series, and that's against the Vegas Falcons right there, while LA Thieves has got Boston. And yeah, that's it. So FaZe could ultimately secure the number one spot, but still then you're reliant on the Major Four tournament to rack up some CDL points. And that's going to be out of the realm. So we'll know definitely next weekend the bracket settings, everything going into the Major Four tournament. But for this weekend right here, guys, it's going to be some epic matches. Trust me. But I'm looking at Atlanta FaZe this weekend. Can they capitalize and take over that number one spot and dethrone the LA Thieves for a potential short gain? That's the one team I'm looking at. Next team is the Los Angeles Thieves. Obviously, they're going against the Vegas Falcons. Not too worried about them, but can they bounce back and not really let FaZe get in their head against this Vegas Falcons series? Or is the Vegas Falcons going to surprise the world and 3-0 the LA Thieves, or even take them to a 3-2? That's going to be the series to watch right there. Then, of course, OpTic and Boston Breach, which it's the bottom of the barrel teams right there, this Friday, May 9th at 4:30 p.m. Eastern. Which one of these teams is going to walk out ahead each other? Because Boston Breach has got 35 more points, more CDL points than OpTic. So they definitely need that 10 to really kind of start separating themselves from OpTic if they want to keep that number 7 spot. While OpTic, I think, is going to be right where they're at. And then, of course, Minnesota Rokkr. Minnesota Rokkr's got the LA Thieves this weekend. And yeah, and they got Toronto Ultra. So I'm looking at my computer screen right here. So the Rokkr, they got 2 opportunities this weekend, but are they going to take advantage of it? That's going to be the question. I think they will against the Los Angeles Guerrillas. But against Toronto Ultra, that's a coin flip, because 1 week Toronto is on a rampage. No team is stopping them. And then the next week, Toronto, it's just like, what are you guys even thinking when you did that last play or that whole series? So we're gonna have to see. We're gonna have to sit here and wait and see with Toronto, and that's really their only matchup this weekend is going to be against the Minnesota Rokkr. I'm not seeing nothing else on the schedule right here. So a lot of these matches are going to matter now, ladies and gentlemen. Cloud9 New York, if they have a chance to really do something, but again, I just don't see it happening against a red hot Atlanta FaZe and a red hot Miami Heretics. I just don't see it happening none this weekend. Maybe they could turn things around and have a good Major 4. But they would definitely need it because them sitting at 105 CDL points, it would take OpTic seriously losing every one of their matches this weekend and next weekend and halfway through the Major 4 tournament for even Cloud9 New York to have a spot. And the same goes for Minnesota Rokkr. They would have to rely on OpTic to start losing out. But I just don't see it happening none this weekend with OpTic. I think OpTic is the better team over Boston. So I will go ahead and pick them. And then you got the Carolina Royal Ravens, which is the 5th best team in the CDL right now. OpTic can surprise me, but I'm leaning more towards the Ravens in the 3-2. And then going into next weekend, you got OpTic Texas against LAG. I see that being a dub right there for OpTic. And then that Sunday, May 18th, you got OpTic versus Toronto. I'm leaning more towards Toronto on that one. But again, OpTic has been one of those teams that can really shock the world and do some damage. But I'm leaning more towards Toronto on that one. And like I said, OpTic winning next weekend against LAG. But this weekend, I have Ravens over OpTic in a 3-2 and OpTic over Boston Breach in a 3-2. So, again, it's all interesting matches going forward, ladies and gentlemen. I'm excited for this weekend, but those are the main storylines. 7-8 and 1-2. 1-2 and 7-8 is your main 4 teams you need to look at this weekend if you are a true diehard Call of Duty League fan, just like I am. And of course, the other matches will be beneficial to watch, like the Miami Heretics and Royal Ravens, but the storylines, again, this weekend, and I will even go ahead and say for next weekend, is 1-2 and 7-8. Which one of those teams is going to prevail? Which team is going to make the qualifiers? And which one is going to be the top-ranked CDL team for the 2025 season for the Call of Duty League? Those are the main storylines I want you to pay attention to, ladies and gentlemen, this weekend. So, guys, we have no Falcons news today outside of just, really the schedule release will be next week. And I might potentially do an early episode on that, or I'll just keep it just to Friday's episode. I'm not sure yet. It depends on how beneficial it is. Like if there's a lot of Sunday night games that we're going to get, I might do an early release on that Thursday. But at the same time, I'm not just quite sure yet. So we'll have to wait and see. And I do have some news that I will be discussing next week, ladies and gentlemen, that will impact my podcasting time here. But I will, of course, mention that next week on the Morgan Man Sports Podcast. I'll have to talk with leadership at Belly Up and let them know what's going on. But I want to make sure everything is official first before I do announce anything. But it is in regards to my future, trying to make sure set myself up for success within these next 4 years and beyond. So I do want to quickly just point that out for you guys. But guys, I hope you did enjoy it. If you did, make sure to like button wherever you are listening from. iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube. Subscribe to the Belly Up Sports YouTube page where you are listening to this from on YouTube. But until then, guys, Cole Morgan, will catch you all later. Peace.
Thank you for listening to this Belly Up Sports Podcast Network product. Some said we go belly up, so we made it our name, and we're still here.